I remember the exact moment the ground fell out from under me. I was sitting at my desk finishing up a late-night work email, the blue glow of my laptop the only light in the room. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Lauren had been distant for weeks, but I'd chalked it up to stress. Work had been brutal for both of us. Then she appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, her silhouette rigid against the dim hallway light. Who is she? The question hung in the air like a blade. I turned slowly, my fingers still hovering over the keyboard. What? Her voice was ice. You heard me? I laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Lauren, what the hell are you talking about? She stepped forward, her eyes glinting with something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt. Triumph. Emily saw you, she said, last Thursday, at the Oakmont, with some woman. My stomach twisted. The Oakmont? I hadn't been there in years. That's impossible. I was at the office until 10 that night. You know that. Bullshit. The word hit me like a punch. I stood, my chair scraping back. Lauren, I swear to God, I'm not cheating on you. She didn't even flinch, just tilted her head, studying me like I was a stranger. Then why does your location history show you there? A cold prickle ran down my spine. Location history? Since when did she check that? Since when did she need to? I opened my mouth to argue, but then I saw it. The flicker in her gaze, not doubt. Calculation. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't about me. This was about her. The accusation didn't fade. It festered. In the days that followed, Lauren's coldness calcified into something unshakable. She stopped touching me. No more absent-minded fingertips grazing my arm as she passed me in the kitchen. No more sleepy, half-conscious cuddles in the early morning before the alarm. She slept turned away from me, her body a rigid line under the sheets, as if even the slightest brush of skin might contaminate her. I tried to talk about it. Lauren, this is insane. You know me. You know I don't know anything anymore. She cut in, her voice hollow. The worst part? She wanted me to beg, to grovel, to perform some grand, desperate act of reassurance. But the more I tried, the more she recoiled, like my sincerity itself was proof of guilt. Then came the phone. She'd never been secretive with it before. Now it was glued to her hip, screen always tilted away. Notifications silenced. Calls taken in another room, her voice hushed but sharp, like she was arguing with someone. One night I woke to the dim glow of her phone lighting our bedroom. She was typing fast, thumbs flying, her face eerily still in the pale blue light. Who are you texting at 3 a.m? I murmured. She didn't jump. Didn't even look at me. Work, she said flatly. I almost believed her, until I saw the name flash on her screen before she flipped it face down. Mark. I didn't know a Mark. I lay there in the dark, my pulse hammering, listening to the furious tap of her fingers. Then there were the late nights, the sudden girls' dinners that ran past midnight, the way she'd come home smelling like a different perfume, her lips freshly glossed, her energy buzzing like she'd just stepped off a roller coaster. You were out late, I said one night, leaning in the doorway as she kicked off her heels. Yeah. No elaboration. Have fun? She finally looked at me, really looked at me, and for a second I saw it, a flicker of guilt, or maybe pity. Yeah, she said again, softer this time. I did. And then, like a switch flipping, her expression hardened. Why? You keeping tabs on me now? I exhaled slowly. No, but I was. Because the more she accused me, the more I realized this wasn't about what I'd done. It was about what she was doing. Sleep became impossible. I lay awake night after night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every strange moment of the past months. The way Lauren would suddenly leave the room to take calls, how she'd return smelling faintly of unfamiliar cologne, the way she'd flinch when I touched her, as if my hands carried some invisible contamination. Then, one rainy Thursday, I found it. I was working from home when Lauren called to say she'd be late. Another emergency meeting. I didn't question it, not out loud. But when I heard her car pull in hours later, I moved to the window without thinking. She wasn't alone. A dark sedan idled at the curb, its wipers pushing aside the steady drizzle. Lauren leaned into the driver's window, her body angled in a way I knew too well, the curve of her back, the tilt of her head. The intimate distance between two people who'd been closer than strangers should be. I couldn't see his face, just a man's hand reaching out to brush her cheek, the way her fingers lingered on his wrist before she pulled away. "Meeting run late?" I asked from the kitchen table. She froze. "Traffic was terrible." "You're soaked." I had to park down the street. A lie. I'd watched her walk from the curb. She avoided my eyes as she passed, leaving a trail of rainwater and something else, a faint, musky cologne that didn't belong in our home. When she bent to unzip her boots, the neckline of her blouse gaped slightly. There, just below her collarbone, a faint red mark. Not a bruise, a love bite. She caught me looking and yanked her collar up, her face hardening. "What?" I said nothing, because suddenly all the accusations, all the late nights, all the distance, it all made terrible, perfect sense. The shower ran for a long time that night. When I passed the bathroom, I heard the muffled sound of her crying. Not guilty tears, the kind you shed when you know you've been caught. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Lauren left at her usual time, pecking my cheek with lips that felt like a stranger's. I waited 15 minutes, then grabbed my keys. Her office was downtown, but her car wasn't headed that way. I kept 3 cars between us, hands clenched on the wheel, my stomach a knot of dread and grim determination. She took the highway north, toward the industrial district, a part of town with no coffee shops, no boutiques, nothing that would explain her being here in the middle of a workday. Then I saw the hotel. The Fairview Inn was the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it, nondescript, tucked between a warehouse and a vacant lot. Lauren pulled into the back parking lot where a silver Audi was already waiting. I parked behind a delivery truck half a block away, heart hammering. The rain from last night had returned, blurring my view through the windshield. But I could still see him, tall, broad-shouldered, early 40s. The way he embraced her the moment she stepped out of the car, his hand sliding down to her waist like they'd done this 100 times before. "Mark." I didn't realize I'd said the name aloud until my own voice startled me. They disappeared inside. I counted the minutes. 1 hour, 2. I thought about storming in, kicking down doors, demanding answers. But the truth was, I already had them. When Lauren finally emerged, her hair was down instead of up, her blouse slightly wrinkled. She paused under the awning, letting Mark kiss her one last time before she hurried back to her car. I followed her back toward the city, my hands numb on the wheel. She didn't go to the office. Instead, she stopped at a drugstore. I watched through the window as she picked up a box of Plan B and a pregnancy test, her face carefully blank at the register. That's when the rage hit me, not hot and wild, but cold and methodical. Because this wasn't just an affair. This was a double life, and I was done being the fool living half of it. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I sat at our kitchen table with a glass of whiskey, watching the ice melt as I pieced together the timeline in my head. The sudden business trips, the unexplained credit card charges. That weekend last month when she'd visited her sister but never answered her phone. The puzzle was complete now, every jagged piece fitting together to form a picture I could no longer unsee. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney from my car. Then I began collecting evidence with the same meticulous focus I used for corporate audits at work. I installed a keylogger on our shared computer. I checked our phone records, 3 calls to the same unlisted number every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. I followed her again the next week, this time with a camera, capturing the way Mark's hands lingered at the small of her back outside that same hotel. The hardest part was pretending, smiling when she made dinner, listening when she complained about work, lying beside her in bed, breathing in the scent of another man's cologne on her skin. Then came the bank statements. I'd almost missed it, a $287 charge at a jewelry store from 2 months ago, the same week as our anniversary, when she'd given me a generic tie. My hands shook as I pulled up the store's website. There, in their catalog, a silver men's bracelet priced at $285. A search of Mark's LinkedIn showed him wearing it in his profile picture. That night, Lauren started another fight. "You've been so distant," she accused, her voice trembling with manufactured hurt. "Is there someone else?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the performance for what it was, the slight exaggeration in her gestures, the way her eyes darted to gauge my reaction, the carefully constructed vulnerability designed to keep me on the defensive. "No," I said quietly. There's no one else. And for the first time, I saw real fear flicker across her face, because she understood what I wasn't saying. I knew. The folder sat heavy in my briefcase for 3 days. I carried it with me everywhere, its weight a constant reminder of what was coming. I'd organized everything with clinical precision, printed call logs highlighted in yellow, hotel receipts dated and annotated, time-stamped photos arranged in chronological order. The silver bracelet receipt sat on top, a $287 monument to her betrayal. I waited until Friday night. Lauren was in rare form when I got home, already halfway through a bottle of wine, her cheeks flushed, her movements loose and careless. She'd been like this a lot lately, drinking more, talking louder, filling every silence with nervous energy. "You're late," she said, swirling her glass. I set my briefcase on the table. "Had some things to take care of." She opened her mouth, probably to start another argument, but I didn't give her the chance. "I know about Mark." The words landed between us like a grenade. Her wine glass froze halfway to her lips. For a second, the only sound was the ice clinking in my untouched drink. Then the performance began. "Who the hell is Mark?" Her voice was too high, her eyes darting to my briefcase. "Is this another one of your—" I opened the folder. The photos fanned out across the table, Lauren laughing with him outside the Fairview Inn. Lauren's car parked at the industrial park every Tuesday and Thursday. The jewelry receipt with the date circled in red. Her face went slack. I'd imagined this moment 100 times, the screaming, the crying, the begging for forgiveness. But the silence was worse. The way her hands trembled as she reached for the photos, the sharp little gasp when she saw the bracelet receipt. "I can explain," she whispered. I leaned back in my chair. "Go ahead." But there was nothing to say. The evidence spoke for itself. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Then finally the mask slipped completely, and I saw the truth in her eyes. Not guilt, not even regret. Relief. And that was the cruelest cut of all. For 37 seconds, the only sound in our kitchen was the hum of the refrigerator. Lauren stared at the photos with an eerie stillness, her fingers hovering over the image of Mark's hands on her waist. When she finally looked up, her face had transformed, the practiced indignation melting into something raw and panicked. You followed me?" Her voice cracked. I didn't blink. "You lied to me." The dam broke. First came the tears, real ones this time, streaking her mascara down her cheeks in black rivers. Then the excuses tumbled out between gasping breaths. "It didn't mean anything. We were just friends at first. You've been so distant." I watched her unravel with clinical detachment. This wasn't the woman I'd married. This was a stranger performing grief like a bad community theater actor. The real performance came next. Her hands clutched at mine across the table. "Please." Her nails dug into my skin. "We can fix this. I'll end it today. You'll never have to—" "Did you love him?" The question sliced through her monologue. Her mouth snapped shut. That pause told me everything. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I thought I did." The admission hung between us, more devastating than any apology. I studied the woman I'd shared a bed with for 7 years, the faint lines around her eyes from all our shared laughter, the familiar way she bit her lower lip when nervous, and realized I didn't recognize her at all. Then came the pivot. Her grip tightened. "But you've been emotionally absent for months. You buried yourself in work. What was I supposed to—" I slid my hands free. The moment my skin left hers, something shifted. Her tears dried instantly, her spine straightened. The vulnerability evaporated like morning fog. "So that's it?" Her voice turned brittle. "After everything, you're just going to walk away?" I looked at the woman who'd gaslit me for months, who'd projected her guilt onto me with surgical precision, and felt something unexpected. Not anger, not even hurt. Relief. "No," I said, standing. "You already did." I left her sitting there, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. The apartment was too quiet when I returned with empty boxes. Lauren had left the day after our confrontation. Stayed with her sister, she said, though I no longer cared enough to verify. The rooms smelled faintly of her perfume still, the ghost of a life we'd pretended to have. I packed methodically, dividing our possessions with a detachment that surprised me. Her things went into cardboard boxes marked in black Sharpie, mine into suitcases. I found the bracelet receipt again, tucked between the pages of a cookbook we'd never used. For a moment, I considered tearing it to pieces. Instead, I slipped it into the folder with the rest of the evidence. Not out of spite, but as a reminder. Never again. Our mutual friends called, of course. Some took her side, some took mine. Most just wanted the gossip. I answered none of them. Let her spin whatever story she wanted. The truth was in that folder, and I no longer needed to wield it like a weapon. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. I signed without hesitation, my signature steady where hers wavered. No fights over assets, no drawn-out negotiations. Just silence. I thought the anger would come eventually, a delayed eruption of all the fury I'd suppressed. But it never did. Instead, there was a peculiar lightness, as if I'd been carrying something heavy for years without realizing it. On my last night in the apartment, I sat on the floor of my empty bedroom, back against the wall, and listened to the echoes of a life that no longer existed. The radiator hissed. A car alarm blared somewhere distant. Normal sounds, unburdened by meaning. I pulled out my phone and typed a note to myself. Something to remember when the doubt inevitably crept back in. You knew. Long before the evidence, before the lies, before the accusations, you knew. Trust that next time. I saved it and set the phone aside. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, blanketing the city in quiet. For the first time in a long time, the silence felt like peace.